The council chamber floated above a dying blue dwarf, a ring of translucent platforms and force-fielded corridors where species measured influence in centuries, not years. Marble, crystal, and living metals shimmered under artificial gravity as delegates from countless worlds adjusted their robes, exoskeletons, and biosuits. Every movement carried weight, every word a subtle threat. And at the center of it all, standing in a simple dark suit, was Elias Rourke. He was not impressive by galactic standards. No ceremonial armor, no glowing insignias, no neural enhancements to boost charisma. Just a man in a tailored suit, gray at the temples, scar along his jaw, and eyes that had seen 3 planetary evacuations and survived. The room buzzed with tension, and Rourke's calm stood out like a lighthouse in a storm. The council speaker, a TZYNN with 8 coiling limbs and eyes like molten brass, filled the chamber with its psychic voice. It resonated in every mind, forcing attention. By unanimous decision, humanity will submit to council oversight. Your military fleets will be dismantled, your shipyards placed under supervision. In exchange, your species will be allowed to exist. Allowed. The words seemed to hang in the air, heavy with contempt. Rourke didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice. He smiled thinly, patiently, as if he were listening to a child's lecture on manners. "You're done?" he asked, soft but carrying every ounce of disbelief and disdain the word deserved. A ripple of irritation moved across the assembly. The speaker flexed its limbs like snapping whips. "You will acknowledge the mercy shown." Rourke tapped a small data slate on his wrist, eyes scanning the council's procedural notes. "This meeting was supposed to be a negotiation," he said. "You skipped that part. You went straight to verdict." Laughter erupted from the upper tiers. A car envoy clicked its mandibles in amusement. "Negotiation implies leverage," it said, voice like serrated metal. "You have none." Rourke nodded slowly, almost politely. "Right. That's what we thought." He turned toward the exit, deliberately slow, every step a signal. No declaration. No threats. Just walking. The speaker's psychic scream cracked like a whip. "You will not leave. You do not have authorization to exit." Rourke looked over his shoulder, eyes narrowing slightly. "We already do." Then he pressed a small button on his wrist. Across the galaxy, human delegations echoed his action. Systems severed from council networks, trade nodes went dark, communication satellites blinked out in perfect coordination. Treaties dissolved in seconds. The council had never faced anything like it. "You misunderstand," hissed the car envoy. "Walking away means war." Rourke's smile returned, sharper now, edged with cold humor. "No. Walking away means you stop telling us what it means." And then humanity was gone. The first council worlds to notice were on the outer rim. 3-star systems failed to report status within an hour. No emergency signals. No distress calls. Sensors picked up ghost signatures, silent, inactive stations floating in orbit. Supply lines vanished. Defense grids shut down. Planets lost all communication simultaneously. The council scrambled analysts, cyber sentinels, and psychic diviners. "Impossible," they muttered. "No species could coordinate this without detection. Their networks were isolated." Humanity disagreed. For decades, Earth's engineers, tacticians, and spies had watched, learned, and planned. While the council mocked them, humiliated them, and ignored them, humans built knowledge like a weapon. And now, the weapon was live. The first human fleets did not announce themselves. They arrived as retrofitted civilian freighters, converted with railguns, missile racks, and hidden boarding craft. Crews were veterans too old for parades and too skilled to die quietly. They struck where the card dominion was strongest, their outer mining stations. The attacks were surgical. No explosions visible from orbit, no grandiose destruction. Stations simply vanished. Fuel depots erupted in carefully controlled detonations. Shipyards experienced industrial accidents. Millions of car civilians died without a single human ship being fired upon. When the Dominion fleet finally appeared, Angry and ready for retaliation, they found supply lines gone, starports deserted, and their crews starving and disoriented. Then the humans broadcast a single message across subspace. "This is Admiral Grace Okoye, United Earth Fleet. We're not here to conquer you. We're here to make sure you never try this again." The Ka were unprepared for the next strike. Human ships rammed and boarded, Marines fighting in corridors of fire, smoke, and twisted metal. One Ka warlord, clawed hand bleeding, watched as a human sergeant advanced through shattered doors, missing an arm but smiling. "Why?" rasped the warlord. "You told us we were allowed to exist." The human replied, voice wet, rough, and full of dark humor. "Figured we'd return the favor." Within weeks, the Ka Dominion surrendered. The Council panicked. They ordered total war. The Silence Array, an ancient weapon buried in the Council's archives, was deployed. Entire sectors of space went dark, subspace collapsed. Human fleets were trapped. Billions of civilians cut off from supply, isolated, assumed defeated. The Council declared victory. Humanity went quiet. For 6 months, the galaxy held its breath. Then, one by one, the array stations began exploding. Human engineers had volunteered for missions with no hope of return. They rode old freighters at sublight for decades, dying en route, passing instructions to the next generation. When they reached the stations, they walked in and detonated reactors manually. "My husband hated bullies," said one elderly woman in a bodycam recording. "This is for him." Silence lifted. Human fleets returned. Reinforced, organized, and furious. The Council's core worlds burned, not indiscriminately, but precisely. Military targets, political centers, symbols of arrogance. They begged for negotiation. Humanity agreed. And when they returned to the chamber months later, the Council was smaller, damaged, and broken. Rourke and Okoye stood, scarred and older, facing a speaker that trembled. "We concede," it said. "Rejoin the Concord. Help us rebuild." Rourke shook his head. "We don't want to." Confusion swept through the chamber. "You would abandon the galaxy?" the speaker asked. "No," Okoye said. "We're setting an example." Humanity didn't dismantle the Council. They didn't take power. They walked away, loose and voluntary, leaving the universe stunned, uneasy, and forever changed. The Council was in chaos. The speaker's limbs twitched uncontrollably, the psychic resonance of panic rattling every mind in the chamber. Star systems were silent where hours ago they had hummed with life, fleets vanished from sensors, and communications, the backbone of control, had been severed. The outer rim trembled under the quiet certainty that humanity had moved, and the galaxy was about to change. Admirals, envoys, and military strategists debated feverishly. The Ka Dominion envoys slammed a claw against the central console. "They cannot be everywhere at once. It is impossible. They are human, but impossible." Impossible, yes. That was the Council's recurring theme whenever humanity acted. They were supposed to be predictable, weak, manageable. Instead, they were every nightmare made flesh, cunning, patient, and unrelenting. Rourke and Okoye did not wait. Their strategy was simple, elegant in its cruelty. Observation first. Strike second. Psychological dominance always. They had studied the Council for decades, learning how it thought, where it faltered, what it prized. Then they exploited every weakness. The first strike was a test. A cluster of car supply stations orbiting the industrial world of Vator 9 went silent. No fleet, no warning, just a ripple of absent communications. The Council sent investigators. They found nothing, no wreckage, no battle signatures, nothing except the eerie emptiness of vanished stations. "Ghosts," whispered a human analyst over the secure channel, not unamused. The second strike was more personal. Humans infiltrated key communications hubs using the very protocols the Council considered unbreachable. Entire message arrays went dark. Not destroyed, merely hijacked. Broadcasts appeared on their networks, clips of human Marines training, laughing, and speaking in languages alien yet unmistakably human. "Your oversight fails," the broadcasts read. "You cannot see us. You cannot stop us. You cannot imagine us." The council panicked. It was not the threat of destruction that unnerved them, it was the audacity. The calm, relentless confidence. Humans moved like predators in a galaxy that had assumed itself invincible. Then came the first fleet encounter. Human ships, old freighters refitted with stealth drives and heavy armaments, slipped past council patrols and struck the Car outer fleet at near a belt. There was no warning salvo, no formal declaration. One moment the Car ships orbited their mining stations, the next, explosions tore through their supply lines, their fuel lines, and their orbital habitats. Aboard the lead Car cruiser, the commander screamed into his intercom as crew after crew reported catastrophic system failures. "What is happening? Report! Tell me what is attacking us!" A human sergeant's face flickered on the console. She had one eye and a crooked grin, missing teeth showing where a battle wound had been. "Relax," she said, voice calm and mocking. "We're just teaching you a lesson in manners." The Car were incredulous. This is a trick." "No trick," she replied. "Just humans doing what humans do best." Boarding parties followed. Human Marines moved in squads no larger than a dozen per cruiser, but their precision was unmatched. They cleared corridors, disabled systems, and left their adversaries alive but incapacitated, terrified, humiliated, and unprepared for the next strike. Meanwhile, the Council convened emergency war sessions. Strategists proposed everything from total extermination to peace treaties. But every option relied on the assumption that humans could be cornered, contained, or intimidated. They could not. Okoye monitored the Council's response from the command bridge of the Intrepid, her fingers dancing across controls. She watched as the Council's fleets scrambled, overcorrected, and exposed themselves. "Everyone thinks the same way," she said quietly to Rourke. "They assume we play by their rules." Rourke's eyes were dark behind his glasses. "They don't know how dangerous it is to assume anything about us." The humans had learned patience. Every strike was calculated, every withdrawal deliberate. They let Council fleets chase empty decoys across sectors, drawing them into ambushes where civilian freighters became gunships, and mining hulls concealed missile batteries. Every encounter was a lesson in improvisation and chaos, a brutal school where the faculty had centuries of arrogance but no imagination. The first major confrontation came at the Astrax Expanse. A Council task force, boasting dozens of the latest cruisers, confronted what appeared to be a ragged human fleet of barely half the size. Their sensors reported outdated hulls and civilian modifications. Their commanders smirked, confident. The humans smiled too, but it was the kind of smile that promised pain. They did not charge. They did not retreat. They split. They feinted. Mining ships moved in unison with freighters carrying hidden rail guns. Old cargo bays became launchers. Humans boarded from unexpected vectors, airlocks, shuttle bays, and even ejectable pods from decoy hulls. By the time the Council fleet realized the scale, the battle was over. 3 cruisers destroyed, 5 crippled, and hundreds of crew captured. And not a single human casualty beyond minor injuries. A Car lieutenant on a damaged cruiser whispered to his commander, voice trembling. How is this possible? They are, everywhere and nowhere at once." "Precisely," the commander muttered. "They are human." Back at the command bridge of the Intrepid, Okoye and Rourke watched the post-battle analysis. "They don't understand human psychology," Rourke said. "They think the strongest fleet wins. We don't fight that way. We fight like predators who learn patience over centuries of hunting." Okoye nodded. "And we let them think they're still in control until it's too late." The Council scrambled more extreme measures. Sensors were recalibrated, psychic wards reinforced, fleets doubled, and war academies mobilized across multiple systems. They even whispered about deploying the Silence Array, an ancient weapon capable of collapsing subspace in entire regions, a weapon humanity had never encountered before. But the humans were already planning for that. They had foreseen this escalation and had contingencies prepared. Engineers, tacticians, and retired veterans, old, angry, and experienced, were already in position, ready to turn the Council's most feared weapon into yet another target. The galaxy watched, afraid. Humanity moved quietly, deliberately, leaving destruction only where it mattered, punishing only when required, and teaching the arrogant powers of the Concord that the universe did not belong to the oldest voices, it belonged to those who refused to kneel. And humanity was not kneeling. The Silence Array was the Council's trump card, a weapon of legend whispered about in fear across thousands of star systems. It didn't just destroy, it erased. Collapsing subspace within entire sectors, it could strand fleets, cut off entire populations, and leave worlds in isolation for decades. The Council had never deployed it in anger, relying instead on its reputation as a deterrent. Until now. Admiral Okoye watched the array's coordinates flicker on the bridge display of the Intrepid. Her jaw tightened. "They think they can silence us," she muttered. "They think cutting off communication will break humanity." Rourke leaned over the console, examining the data streams from outer sectors. "They've studied our history," he said. "They know we can survive disaster. But they think we won't respond if we can't coordinate." Okoye gave a dry laugh. "They don't know the half of it. Coordination isn't always about signals. Sometimes it's about instinct, planning, and patience." Within hours of the Silence Array's activation, human fleets found themselves cut off. Communication networks went dead. Subspace routes collapsed. Entire fleets in the Astrax expanse suddenly became islands in the void. Civilian populations, previously evacuated to orbital habitats and colonies, were stranded. Supplies dwindled. The Council assumed victory. They watched silently as analysts calculated the inevitable collapse of human resistance. Their confidence was palpable, almost tangible. It was the calm before the storm. Humans did not panic. They adapted. Old freighters became mobile command posts, asteroid fields became supply caches, and crews long retired from combat returned to duty, armed with knowledge and grim humor. Engineers volunteered for missions with zero probability of survival. They were the spearhead of a strategy the Council could not imagine: infiltration from within. The first strike on the array came from inside. A single human shuttle, stripped of all markings, slipped past security protocols the Council assumed unbreachable. It docked silently, leaving the crew's biosigns masked and undetectable. Inside, engineers moved like shadows, bypassing internal security and sabotage systems. "We do this fast, or we die here," whispered the shuttle commander to her team. And they did. One by one, array stations began to explode, not from bombardment, but from within. Reactor cores detonated with surgical precision, obliterating the weapon from the inside out. Billions of tons of subspace collapsing technology were gone, leaving the Council's forces isolated and panicked. Back on the Intrepid, Okoye reviewed the footage from a station detonation. A human engineer, gray-haired and trembling with age, smiled into a bodycam before triggering the reactor. "My husband hated bullies," she said quietly. "This is for him." Rourke's voice was low and steady, almost meditative. "They won't know what hit them until the first station explodes. Then every assumption they made about humans is wrong." The first Council fleet to arrive at a reactivated communication node found human forces waiting, not in overwhelming numbers, but perfectly positioned. Boarding parties disabled weapons, captured command crews, and left morale shattered. A car warlord, cornered in his own flagship, stared at a human sergeant with both disbelief and growing fear. How do you find us?" he hissed. The sergeant grinned, missing teeth showing from an old battle wound. "We've been watching you for decades," she said. "You should have been paying attention." By the time the Council realized the Silence Array was destroyed, humanity's counterstrike had already begun in earnest. They targeted strategic nodes, supply depots, and fleet command structures with terrifying efficiency. No fleet, no matter how technologically advanced, could anticipate the improvisational brilliance of human tactics. And the psychological impact was worse than the physical destruction. Broadcasts went out over council channels, showing humans laughing, joking, and casually dismantling centuries of supposedly untouchable infrastructure. They believe in chaos, one council analyst whispered, eyes wide. They embrace it. And somehow it works. Humanity's dark humor cut deeper than any weapon. One broadcast, sent from a captured command cruiser, showed a human engineer painting, gone fishing, on the hull of a council flagship before detonating its reactor. The message scrolled across the galaxy: we're everywhere. We're patient. We are human. The council faltered. Orders came in rapid succession, conflicting and desperate. Fleets were rerouted, only to be ambushed by old freighters they had dismissed as cargo ships. Supply lines, supposedly secure, vanished. Communication nodes that were meant to coordinate counterattacks fell silent, replaced by human-controlled channels broadcasting taunts and tutorials on survival. Rourke observed quietly from the bridge. Every step we took was calculated. Every mistake they think they can exploit, we anticipated. Every assumption about fear, obedience, and control? Broken. Okoye looked at him, nodding. And they still think humans can be contained. They don't realize that we never were. The silence array, they thought they were cutting the head off the snake. Instead, they cut off the tail. Now the snake knows exactly where to strike. The Council's fleets, already rattled, began to crumble from within. Morale plummeted as captured crews returned to broadcast human messages, not threats, but lessons. Discipline, hierarchy, and strategy could not withstand decades of human ingenuity combined with ruthlessness and improvisation. The silence array had been their ultimate weapon, but humanity had turned it into a weapon against them. Each destroyed station became a rallying point for human morale, a signal that the galaxy's supposed rulers were fallible. By the time the Council realized the full extent of the breach, human forces were already en route to Central Council worlds. They did not arrive in a display of overwhelming firepower. They arrived quietly, methodically, leaving devastation only where it mattered, teaching lessons instead of exterminating indiscriminately. And somewhere, in the quiet corridors of the Intrepid, Okoye and Rourke allowed themselves the faintest smile. We just started, Okoye said. Rourke's eyes gleamed with a quiet fury. The universe isn't ready for what comes next. Humanity had survived the silence array. They had turned the Council's most fearsome weapon into their own advantage. And now, the galaxy would learn a painful truth: humans were not to be underestimated, negotiated with, or controlled. They were to be feared. By the time human fleets approached the inner Council worlds, the galaxy was already whispering their legend. Entire sectors had gone dark, fleets vanished, and communications were under human control. The Council had thought themselves untouchable, an ancient bureaucracy of perfect order, but they had underestimated humanity's patience, cunning, and willingness to embrace chaos. The first target was Draxel Prime, a fortified Council stronghold rumored to be impregnable. Orbital defenses bristled with rail guns, energy shields, and automated missile arrays. Surface cities were armored like fortresses. Council generals expected humans to strike openly, a fleet-on-fleet confrontation in classic style. They were wrong. Human ships emerged from asteroid fields, cargo freighters and retired miners converted into silent war machines. They didn't enter the engagement en masse. Instead, squads slipped past sensor grids, boarding drones silently detached, and tactical strike teams infiltrated key orbital nodes. The Council fleet opened fire, but each shot fell on empty space or decoys. Mines exploded behind them, cutting off retreat paths, while automated turrets once thought secure were quietly neutralized. Aboard the flagship Vigilant, Council Admiral Salrin barked orders into the console. Target the intruders! Lock onto their signatures! Don't let them reach the station! A human voice, calm and amused, cut through the broadcast channel. Admiral, said Sergeant Kira Voss, aboard one of the converted freighters. You missed a spot. A volley of micro-missiles erupted from hidden cargo bays, disabling the flagship's shields. Boarding pods attached silently, and human marines poured in. They did not scream, they did not bluster. They moved with precision, disabling weapon arrays, capturing officers, and leaving chaos in their wake. By the time Sulren realized the full extent of the breach, Draxel Prime's orbital defenses were neutralized. Human engineers were already downloading navigation schematics, weapon codes, and fleet deployment schedules. "This isn't war," Sulren muttered, panic creeping into his voice. "It's a lesson." It was. Humanity advanced not as conquerors but as masters of inevitability. Supply chains across the Council collapsed. Communication hubs, supposedly secure, became propaganda channels broadcasting human messages of dark humor, sarcasm, and cold practicality. A captured officer was shown trying to reason with a human squad. The message: your protocols are pointless. Your rules do not apply here. You are not in control. In the outer rings, car fleets surrendered preemptively. They had seen what humans could do to one ship, one station, one crew, and understood they were not negotiating with diplomats or strategists, but with a force that had no equal in cunning or resolve. Yet humanity's victory was not indiscriminate. They destroyed only what was militarily necessary, sparing civilian populations and cultural heritage where possible. They demonstrated power without tyranny, precision without cruelty beyond the battlefield. Every strike carried a lesson: underestimate humans, and you pay. But humanity did not seek vengeance for vengeance's sake. Rourke and Okoye coordinated the campaigns from the Intrepid, moving from system to system. They were veterans of countless operations, decades of planning compressed into the final decisive moves. "Do you think they'll ever forgive us?" asked Okoye quietly, observing a captured Council flagship burning in orbit. Rourke shook his head. "They don't need to forgive us. They need to respect us." The human fleets did not occupy worlds permanently. They left governance in local hands where possible, creating voluntary alliances, loose federations, and systems of mutual defense. They taught technology and tactics but refused to impose law. The galaxy began to recognize a new paradigm: humans didn't need to rule. They only needed to be present to make others reconsider the meaning of power. The Council, shattered and humiliated, convened once more. Their speaker trembled, limbs writhing with psychic distress. "You have demonstrated overwhelming force," it said, almost pleading. "What is your demand?" Rourke leaned forward, voice calm and deliberate. "We don't have demands. We have an offer. Leave the galaxy free to govern itself. Stop pretending that control equals stability. And if you ever think of threatening humanity again, we'll remind you why you underestimated us." The speaker's psychic resonance faltered. You would abandon authority?" "Yes," Okoye said. "Authority that cannot be earned, respect that cannot be demanded, and power that is blind to consequence. Those are the weaknesses we exploit. We're done playing your game." And with that, humanity walked away. Not from victory, but from the throne the Council had assumed they were destined to claim. The galaxy adjusted. Some species welcomed human guidance, learning to collaborate. Others watched with wary suspicion, understanding for the first time the consequences of arrogance. Human fleets became symbols, not rulers. They existed as a reminder: ingenuity, patience, and relentless resolve were forces the galaxy could not ignore. Years later, a young alien officer asked a grizzled human spacer why humanity never consolidated power when they had the chance. The spacer, scars lining his face and one eye missing, shrugged. "Kings get shot," he said. "Partners get paid. Humans don't want to rule. We want the universe to understand who we are, and that's lesson enough." The Council's remnants reconstructed, wiser but humbled. Humans never returned to the Concord Chamber, not out of fear, but because they didn't need to. The universe had changed. Every fleet, every colony, every intelligence network now assumed one truth: humans did not play by the old rules, and those who tried to impose them would pay dearly. The galaxy learned something else too: patience, ingenuity, and audacity could outweigh centuries of dominance. And humanity, patient and cunning, had just rewritten the rules entirely. The universe did not laugh anymore. It listened,